Hello, hello. We are back for our fifth and final one of the Streets of New Capenna decks. This is the Obscura deck. So let's see what's in here. Alright. So Obscura, of course, being the color set that corresponds with Esper. And to start us off, we have Kamiz, Obscura Oculus. Um, so whenever you attack, target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. It connives. Then choose another attacking creature with less power. That creature gains double strike until end of turn. Oh, neat. So definitely some interesting tricks that can be done there. Then we have Tivit, Seller of Secrets, which is flying ward 3 in Council's Dilemma. Whenever Tivit enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, starting with you, each player votes for evidence or bribery. For each evidence vote, investigate. For each bribery vote, create a treasure token. While voting, you may vote an additional time? Wow. Okay. We get an offer you can't refuse. A fantastic 1 mana spell that's used in several combo decks between Modern and, let's see, it's played in Modern, Legacy, Pioneer, and I think it's even shown up in Vintage a few times now. Of course, we have Obscura Charm, Obscura Storefront, Swords to Plowshares, of course, fantastic spot removal for creatures, Daring Saboteur, which can be unblockable, and when it deals combat damage, you get a loot, basically. Looter Il Core, also a looter, of course, and it has Shadow. Treasure Cruise, a very broken card. It can easily mimic a Ancestral Recall. Whirler Rogue, a great token generator that can also make things unblockable. Ink Fathom Witch, a great way to boost your unblocked creatures, and can really quickly close out games. Master of Riddles, or Mask of Riddles, rather. Gives an equipped creature fear, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Of course, some staples, Arcane Signet, Azorius Signet, Commander Sphere, Dimir Signet, Belwar Stone, Orzhov Signet, and Sol Ring, along with Swiftfoot Boots. We have Aerial Extortionist. When it enters play or deals combat damage to a player, exile up to one target non-land permanent for as long as that card remains exiled. Its owner may cast it. So it allows you to remove things from play and they have to recast it. Whenever another player casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, you draw a card. So nice little tax effect there. Jailbreak. Um, return target permanent in an opponent's graveyard to the battlefield under their control. When that permanent enters the battlefield, return up to one target permanent card with equal or lesser mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield. Wow. That has a ton of potential. It's basically a super super political double reanimation spell. That is amazing. Smuggler's Share. At the beginning of each end step, draw a card for each opponent who drew two or more cards this turn. Then create a treasure token for each opponent who has 2 or more lands enter the battlefield under their control this turn. It's at the beginning of each end step. Wow. Let's see. Cephalid Face Taker. It can't be blocked. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may have it become a copy of another target creature until end of turn, except that it's a 1/4 and this creature can't be blocked. Wow. Change of plans. Each of X target creatures you control connive. You may have any number of them phase out. So this could be used offensively or defensively, given that's an instant. So it lets you either um, buff several creatures and draw several cards. Well, loot several cards. And you can also use it to phase out your creatures, so it can be used defensively as well, to either prevent removal, spot removal, or effectively fog a combat. Like there's a ton of stuff that can be used for. That is nuts. Let's see. In Too Deep is a split-second aura. Enchant creature, planeswalker, or clue. Enchanted permanent is a colorless clue artifact with 2 sacrifices this artifact, draw a card, and loses all other abilities. So it would no longer be a creature or a planeswalker. And the reason why they have it also enchant a clue is because if they didn't, as soon as this turned the permanent into a clue, it turned the creature or planeswalker into a clue, it would no longer be a creature or planeswalker, and the enchantment would fall off. So it's something interesting with how they had to template that. Mask of the Schemer. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, it connives X, where X is the amount of damage it dealt to that player. Equip 2. That is very strong. Skyway Robber. So it has Escape for 4, and you have to exile 5 cards for that. When it escapes, it has whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may cast an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell from among the cards exiled with Skyway Robber without paying its mana cost. Huh. That could be easily abused. So you could play a giant artifact or huge instant or sorcery off of the escape for it. That's pretty crazy. Let's see. Lethal Scheme, Convoke, so it becomes cheaper for each thing that you tap for it, or each creature that you tap for it. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Each creature that convoked Lethal Scheme connives. Okay, so it's both creature and planeswalker removal, and it can give you a way to connive at instant speed. Misfortune Teller. Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, create a 2/2 black rogue creature token. If it was a land, create a treasure. Otherwise, you gain 3 life. Huh. Okay. There's some graveyard hate there. Writ of Return. Return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, and it has Cipher. So you can exile the card encoded on a creature you control. Whenever the creature deals combat damage to a player, its controller can cast a copy of the encoded card without paying its mana cost. Right. Life Insurance. It has Extort. And whenever a non-token creature dies, you lose 1 life and create a treasure token. Huh. I could see that playing really nicely with several things in black-white, even not just only in this deck, but on its own. And then Obscura Confluence. Choose 3. Until end of turn, target creature loses all abilities and has base power and toughness 1/1. Target creature connives, and target player returns a creature from their graveyard to their hand. I think this may be the weakest out of all of the out of all the confluences that we've seen. But definitely useful, but I think it may be the weakest out of them. Oscar, Rubbish Reclaimer. Costs 1 less for each different mana value among cards in your graveyard. Whenever you discard a non-land card, you may Whenever you discard a non-land card, you may cast it from your graveyard. The templating on that is so strange that I'm not sure how that would work. I would have to look up I'd have to look up some stuff for that. Currency Converter. Okay, now this, I know this card has shown up a lot in Legacy. Whenever you discard a card, you may exile that card from your graveyard. 2, and tap it. Draw a card, then discard a card. And tap it. Put target card exiled with Currency Converter into your graveyard. If it's a land card, create a treasure token. If it's a non-land card, create a 2/2 black rogue. Archon of Coronation. Flying. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. As long as you're the monarch, damage doesn't cause you to lose life. Huh. But when a creature deals combat damage to you, its controller still becomes the monarch. Okay. Austere Command. Okay, that definitely was in need of a reprint. You get to choose 2, destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantments, destroy all creatures with mana value 3 or less, or destroy all creatures with mana value 4 or greater. So it can either be a 6 mana Wrath, or it can let you destroy other things as well. Dusk to Dawn, nice reprint from Amonkhet, I believe. Either Amonkhet or Hour of Devastation. I believe it was Amonkhet, though. Destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater, and then the Aftermath lets you return all creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. Good old Sun Titan. Let's see. Champion of Wits. When it comes into play, you draw cards equal to its power. If you do so, you discard 2 cards, and it has Eternalize, which comes back as 4/4. So this was used to great effect, and also in Amonkhet. Chasm Skulker. Whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on it. When it dies, create X 1/1 blue squid creature tokens with Island Walk, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Chasm Skulker. Commit to Memory, which is a fantastic counter, and then once it's in your graveyard, it's a wheel. Well, actually, I don't think it's yeah. Each player shuffles their hand into their graveyard, then draws 7 cards. So not a wheel, but a time twister, effectively. And then Ghostly Pilferer. When it comes untapped, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. Whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, you draw a card, which is very powerful, both in Commander and in Legacy. And then you can discard a card so that it can't be blocked. Identity Theft. Identity Theft is not a joke. Whenever Identity Theft attacks, you may exile another target non-land or another target non-token creature. If you do, Identity Thief, not Identity Theft. Identity Thief becomes a copy of that creature until end of turn. Return the exiled card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So, and you can use this both on your creatures and your opponent's creatures. Nadir Kraken. Whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on it and create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. Stolen Identity. Create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature, and then it has Cipher. Custody Lich. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. Whenever you become the monarch, target player sacrifices a creature. Drana, Liberator of Malakir. Flying, first strike. When it deals combat damage to a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on each attacking creature you control. It's from Battle of Zendikar originally. Graveblade Marauder. Death Touch. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player loses life equal to the number of cards in your graveyard. Nightmare Unmaking. Exile each creature with power greater than the number of cards in your hand, or exile each creature with power less than the number of cards in your hand. Profane Command. Used to be a black staple. I don't know if it is or not anymore. But target player loses X life, or return target creature with mana value X or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, or up to X creatures gain fear until end of turn. Alayla, Artful Provocateur. Now this is a reprint from the Brawl decks that were released with Throne of Eldraine. It has flying, death touch, lifelink, and other creatures you control with flying get +1/+0. And whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment, you create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. Daxos of Meletus. It can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. When it deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library. You gain life equal to that card's mana value. Until end of turn, you may cast that card, and you may spend mana as though it were any color to cast that spell. Dragon Lord Ojutai. Has hexproof as long as it's untapped. Flying, of course. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them in your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Now, in Dragons of Tarkir, this was a fantastic finisher. Fallen Shinobi. Wow, that's a reprint I was not expecting to see. So it has ninjutsu for 2, a blue and a black. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles the top 2 cards of their library. Until end of turn, you may play those cards without paying their mana costs. Shadow Mage Infiltrator. Fear, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Silent Blade Oni. Ninjutsu for 4, a blue and a black. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, look at that player's hand. You may cast a spell from among those cards without paying its mana cost. Thief of Wow, they just packed the good reprints into this one. Whenever Thief of Sanity deals damage to a player, look at the top 3 cards of that player's library, exile one of them face down, then put the rest into their graveyard. You may look at and cast that card as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast that spell. Utter End. Exile target non-land permanent. A fantastic reprint. Rexiol, the Risen Deep. Island Walk, Swamp Walk. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant or sorcery from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into a graveyard this turn, exile it instead. And Quietus Spike, which gives a creature death touch, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. And Strionic Resonator. You can pay 2 and tap it to copy target triggered ability you control. You may choose new copies for the target. Choked Estuary. Creeping Tar Pit. Wow. Darkwater Catacombs. Exotic Orchard. Fetid Heath. That's another one of the filter lands. Port Town. Prairie Stream. Skycloud Expanse. Sunken Hollow. Temple of Silence, Wayfarer's Bauble, Arcane Sanctum, Ash Barrens, a core card used in Pauper, Command Tower, Esper Panorama, so our discount fetch land, Myriad Landscape, Path of Ancestry, Rogue's Passage, so continue to make your things unblockable. And then we have Thriving Heath, Thriving Island, and Thriving Isle, and Thriving Moor. And plains, we have 4 plains. 1, 2, 3, 5 islands. And 5 swamps. and then a full art plains, a full art island, and a full art swamp. We have our cardboard stand-in for the commander. Okay, now we have some tentacle tokens with, let's see, Champion of Wits, Eternalize. Yeah, Eternalize token on the back, and 2 clues. Then we have a fairy with a rogue on the back, another fairy with a rogue on the back. Then we have 3 squids with Island Walk, which have the Monarch and 2 treasures on the back. Then we have a Thopter with a treasure on the back, and another Thopter with a treasure on the back. Then we have +1/+1 and Obscura tokens. All right. Wow, that had some really good stuff in it. I'm surprised they were able to pack so many reprints into that. So it seems that the Streets of New Capenna decks have a ton of fantastic reprints. I'm frankly pretty surprised by them. So, what's your favorite reprint that, leave in the comments down below what your favorite reprint from the Streets of New Capenna Commander decks have been. And as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one. I think we're probably going to be opening Midnight Hunt next, but it depends on on whether or not I get to it in the next few days. But again, thanks for actually will probably be the collector boosters or sample boosters from these next. But yeah, as always, thanks for joining us on this adventure, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.